In the last couple of weeks, I have been playing around a little bit with scripting. I've been doing some bash scripting. Every now and then, there'll be periods of time where all of a sudden I have this urge, this itch that I need to scratch. So I'll get into scripting and programming a little bit. And what I've been doing here in the last couple of weeks is I've been creating some scripts that involve FZF, which is the Fuzzy Finder utility. So what I wanted to do today is show you one of these scripts I've been working on. So this particular script is a script I'm going to call Auto, and it's got a little bit of length to it. It's 154 lines long, but it's not a very complicated script. A significant portion of the lines in this script are actually comments. I did comment things that I felt like needed to be explained. There's even some help information here that gets printed out to the standard output. If you give it the -H flag, the help flag for the program. So it's not like it's a ton of code here. And I will go through the code block by block and tell you exactly what each of the things in this script do. But first, let me actually show you what the script actually does. So let me cd into the repository where this script is located, and let me run this script, which I call Auto for Autostart. And you get a menu. You can see add a program to Autostart. So this is the programs that Autostart when you log into your desktop environment or window manager. What this program essentially does is it goes and grabs the .desktop files that are typically found in places like user share applications, and it copies that .desktop file for that program over into your home directory /.config/autostart, because that's where your Autostart programs live on the system. If I actually open a file manager, I'll come back to the program here in a second. But in your home directory on a Linux system, you will have .config. Go into .config. There should be a folder called Autostart. If there's not, you could create one. And inside .config/autostart, if you drop the .desktop files for any application in there, it auto starts every time you log into your desktop environment or window manager. In my case, I have two programs that auto start on my system. Flameshot, which is a screenshot utility. It sits in the sys tray here in my Qtile config. And Nextcloud auto starts. That's the Nextcloud desktop client. But with this script I'm working on, I could add anything to this. For example, if I go back to the script, add a program to Autostart. Well, let me hit enter, and it goes and finds all the .desktop files that are in, for example, user share applications. There's a couple of other directories on your system that could have these .desktop files, and I go find, a program. Maybe I want to add, well, I'll just add transmission. The BitTorrent client, I'm going to add transmission to my Autostart directory. So let me just hit enter on that. And, I get output. You can see I get a little checkbox, and it says transmission GTK added to Autostart directory. And then it lists all the programs currently in my Autostart directory. If I go back to the workspace here that has my file manager, you can see transmission has now been added to the Autostart directory. If I logged out of Qtile and logged back in, transmission would now be one of the programs that automatically starts when I log in. How cool is that? Now, what if I want to remove programs from Autostart? Well, I could just open my file manager and come here, but with the magic of this script, especially since most people don't know where all of these .desktop files are located on the system, some people need help. So, that's what this script is. If I rerun the script and I want to remove a program from Autostart, it's going to list all the .desktop files in my home directory /.config/autostart, and one of them is transmission. If I hit enter on that, you can see now I get an X, and it says transmission GTK removed from Autostart directory. And then once again, it prints out all the current .desktop files in the Autostart directory, and now it's just left with Flameshot and Nextcloud. So let me show you what's going on in the script. Let's actually open the script, and let me zoom way in here so you guys can see everything here. Now, if you're brand new to bash scripting, this may look complicated. Most of this stuff, though, is dead simple, especially when I explain it. A lot of this stuff will make sense. The very first line of any bash script has to be this right here. This is what is known as the shebang. It basically tells the computer when you execute this script what language the script is written in, what interpreter needs to interpret this. In this case, it's a bash script. So you need to specify, you need to do crunchbang, the hashtag followed by the exclamation point, crunchbang /user/bin/env space bash. So every time you create a bash script, that's the first line, self-explanatory, right? And then the rest of this here is comments. This is just for you guys. When I push this to my GitLab, it's a little bit of a README, right? It tells you the name of the script. It tells you the description, what it does. It tells you the dependencies. This depends on FZF. It also depends on standard like GNU core utils, but that's going to typically be there. So I'm not going to list that as a dependency. It also tells you my GitLab, the location where to get the script. Now I'll push the script right after I'm done with this video. I've already created the repository. It's going to be called FZ scripts. And then you're going to have the location to the licensing. I'll probably license it under the GPL v3. That's typically what I do. And this will be the location to the license, and then contributors. So everybody that has worked on this script thus far, which for now it's just me, Derek Taylor. And this is the basic template that I always start my scripts with, the shebang, a little description information. In the next line, I always add this: set space -EUO space pipefill. Now, you don't necessarily need to know what this is. Just know this is for debugging. So when you set these flags, it causes the script to fail if certain things happen, which is a good thing. Otherwise, you're going to get hidden bugs that are hard to discover. One day, I'll probably do a more in-depth video on the set built-in as part of the bash shell. But for now, just know that that's important, again, just so the script fails if certain things happen. Otherwise, the script may not fail if those certain things don't happen. And you could end up with bugs that you just never really discover. So the first 14 lines of this script or so are really not necessarily the script, right? That's just getting started. All right, now here is actually where the script starts. The very first thing I do is I decide to create this variable. I call it fmenu in all caps, just so it's obvious that this is my fuzzy finder menu with the various flags that I want to set with it. Fuzzy finder has a ton of flags, and for me, I want to have these as the option. So I want the layout reversed. I want a border. I want the border rounded. I want a margin of 5% around the border, yada, yada, yada. And the very last flag, and this is important, needs to be -- prompt, because I will give this a prompt. So anytime I use this variable later in the script, fmenu, I'm going to do $fmenu, and then right behind it, whatever I put as text in quotes is going to be the prompt, because the prompt was the last flag that was part of this variable. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, just know anytime later in the script when I do fmenu and then some text behind it, that text behind it is the prompt for the fuzzy finder. One other thing I need to explain is -- header. So the fuzzy finder menu can have a header. You can give it a just text title. For me, I'm doing the header is base name and then $0. What base name $0 is, it's the name of the script that you're executing. So if I go back and execute the auto script again, you can see at the top there is a header. It just says auto, because that's the name of the script. That's all that is, that base name $0. So now that we've got our fuzzy finder set with the correct flags and options I want to use, then I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and create some arrays. So first I need to go and grab all of the Autostart files that are in .config/Autostart, because if I go back to the program, when I remove a program from Autostart, it's listing everything in that directory. Well, how does it get that? Well, it gets that with me being able to go and grab all of the files that are in that directory. And how I do that is I use the find command. So this is just a standard util on most Linux systems, the find command. If I actually go back to the terminal, I can show you this in action. Let's run find on $home/.config/autostart. And then give it -type, and it's going to be F. So we're looking for type F, which is files. If I did type D, that would be for directories. And then I want this to print F, and then inside quotes here, I'm going to do %F for the files themselves, and then \n. So I want a line break after each file that it finds in that directory. And if I did this correctly, which I didn't because the printf here has to have a dash in it. And that is what you get in the fuzzy finder menu when I do the auto script and go to remove from Autostart. That is the output, right? That's just that find command. Now, one thing to note about the find command that I used with the printf there, let me zoom in. I should have zoomed in for this, but the reason I added this part here with the dash printf and then the format to actually, do it the way I wanted to do it. If I didn't actually use any of this and just ran the command as normal, typically this is how I would run it. It's going to give me the file names, but it's also going to give me like the full path. And I didn't want the full path. I just wanted this. So that is the reason that I needed to format that with the dash printf and then specify %f and then, the new line behind it. So back to the script. So I'm creating an array. So this array is going to be called autostart_files. And at first it's an empty array. We're going to fill it with something. And what we're going to fill it with is we're actually going to fill it with the output from that find command. So you can see autostart_files plus equals is, hey, if this array already exists and already has some components, add to it. In this case, it started as an empty array, so it's just adding to an empty array, but it's filling it with those .desktop files. Now you'll notice that this command here is inside an if statement, which is also inside a for loop. So what this for loop is, for directory in home.config/autostart. So for this directory that is .config/autostart, if this directory exists, this is just a test. Does .config/autostart exist? If it does, then go and fill that array with the contents of that directory. Obviously, if the directory doesn't exist, you don't need to do this because the directory doesn't exist, so there's nothing to do. So that is me getting the Autostart files that are in config/autostart. Now, where do I get all the .desktop files? Well, I have an array for that. So desktop_files starts out as an empty array. We're going to fill it, and we're going to do it in the exact same fashion I did here, except it's a little more complicated because .desktop files can be located in a variety of places on a Linux system. They can be in user share applications. They can also be in user local share applications. And they can also be in your home directory .local/share/applications. And instead of the tilde character there, it probably would be best if I actually did this variable here, $home all caps. So very similar to what we did up here for dir in .config/autostart, we're doing for dir in 3 different directories here. And then we're doing the if statement again. So if the directory exists, and some of these directories may or may not exist on your system. On my Arch system, it's going to find user share applications and there's going to be stuff in it. And there may be some stuff in .local/share applications, but I don't believe user local share applications on an Arch system is typically where .desktop files go. And I don't know if the directory exists. I could open the terminal and check, but let's assume it doesn't. Well, if it doesn't, no harm, no foul, because if the directory doesn't exist, it's just not going to do anything. So, but it will find some directories that do have those .desktop files, and it's going to add those to this array, the desktop_files array. How do we do that? Well, the same thing we did with the find command up here. We're going to do basically the exact same thing. We're going to find in these directories -type f for files, and then we're going to do -print instead of -printf. And the reason is I want the format of this output to look a little different. If I actually rerun the script here, remember, add a program to Autostart, had actually the full path. So I didn't want the full path on removing a program, so the things that are in .config/autostart, but I did want the full path when I'm adding a program to Autostart. And the reason is because, again, they could be in one of 3 different directories. So I wanted to specify where I'm getting that .desktop file from. I could have, not added the full path and just did the file name, kind of like I did before. But yeah, for me, I thought that made sense. Plus, for educational purposes with this script, I liked doing it 2 different ways, so you guys get to see both examples. So now we have these arrays, the desktop files array, we have the Autostart files array. Let's actually do something with these arrays. So let's start with the add auto function here. So adding programs to Autostart, that's what this function is for. So the very first line here is probably the most important line, the most interesting line here is selected underscore file. That's a variable name. I could have created any name I wanted for this variable, but it's a variable and it's going to equal the output of all of this. So fmenu, remember, is our fuzzy finder with all of the flags and options I wanted to use. Remember, the last flag was the prompt flag, so that means add program to Autostart is the prompt we see. And then right after that, you have this here that looks kind of funny. You have a less than sign and then space, another less than sign, and then this printf command inside of parentheses. And what it's printing is the contents of our earlier desktop files array. So you remember we just looked at desktop files up here. So that's all of our .desktop files. So what this is doing, this is essentially feeding the output from this desktop files array from the printf command. It is feeding that into fmenu, or the fuzzy finder menu. So if I go back to the terminal and rerun the script here, oh, there we go, and I do add a program to Autostart, you can see as soon as I hit enter, add a program to Autostart, it lists all of everything here. So this is that first line, the selected file variable, right? It's grabbing all of this stuff, and whatever I choose, for example, if I choose the nitrogen program to add to my Autostart directory, if I hit enter, nitrogen.desktop, that particular desktop file is the selected file, right? So that is why I named that variable what I did. So, and now that we have the selected file, the rest of this stuff happens. So if selected file, so it's running a test, did I actually choose something from the fuzzy finder menu? If I didn't, then obviously this fails and nothing will happen. But if I chose something, if there is a selected file, then what do I want you to do? Well, I want you to echo the name of the file, which you saw it did echo the name of the file to standard output. Or actually what it does here is I'm actually creating the selected file in an array, and this could be multiple files. That's one thing I didn't tell you. You can actually do multiple files selection with this fuzzy finder script, but it creates an array of what I chose and then another for loop, and then it just prints out the output. So this is really just all of this text. That's all that is. I'm not going to go through this. This is going to be a very long video if I explain every single thing, but it's essentially just printing all of that text, assuming I selected a file. And if I didn't select a file, it's just going to print the standard output, no options selected. And that's the add auto function. The remove auto function is removing things from the Autostart directory, and it's basically the same thing, except, this time selected file and then the F menu. I get a different prompt, so instead of adding programs, we're removing programs from Autostart. And then what are we feeding it? Well, we're feeding it the Autostart files array rather than the desktop files array. But other than that, it's basically the same idea. If I rerun the script and go to remove from Autostart, now I can remove nitrogen from Autostart. By the way, let me show you the multi-select. So if I rerun the Autostart script, let's add a program. And instead of doing enter, if I did tab, so let me tab. I just tabbed transmission GTK. Let me tab calculate, my calculator, and then let me hit enter. And it just added those two programs to the Autostart directory. Now let me remove those programs. So let me remove from Autostart, and now tab on transmission and tab on calculate. And now let me hit enter, and it removed both of those files from the Autostart directory. And the reason multi-select works is because back when I defined the F menu variable here, I did use the -- multi-flag, so it's telling Fuzzy Finder allow multiple selections. Depending on what you're doing with Fuzzy Finder, you may or may not want to allow multiple selections for some things, but in this case, multi-selection was important. And then other than that, the rest of the script, I gave it some flags. The next block here is while getops. Getops allows you to use flags and options with the script. For example, you can see I do A, L, R, and H. So I've got two different flags. So if I do auto-A for Autostart, it just goes directly to the Autostart portion of the script. If I did -R for remove, it goes directly to the remove portion of the script. And then I did have a -H flag for help. and it just prints out kind of like a man page style information here, and that's all that is. And again, that's a pretty big group of lines in the code. Is the while get ops plus the help information, right? That's probably like 30 lines of code, but it's very simple. There's nothing to it, really nothing for me to explain there. And then finally, at the very end is an interesting bit of code here. This here, if $hashtag space equals 0. So basically, if I run the script and I don't give it a flag, then what do I want you to do? Well, in that case, well, this is the way I've been running the program most of the time, right? As I don't give it a flag. Well, when I don't give it a flag, it creates an array that I call options, and these are the values within the array. If I go back and rerun the script without a flag, those are the options, right? So that's the menu you get when you don't run it with a particular flag or option. And from there, it's just your basic, here's your menu using the fmenu variable. We pipe the options into fmenu, so you get the menu with the 5 choices, and then you have a case statement. So this case statement is, hey, if you choose add a program to Autostart, do this. If you choose remove a program from Autostart, do that. And what do? Well, you do $0, which means run the script space -a with the A flag, or run the script with the -r flag. So that's all that is. If I choose something from the menu, for example, add a program to Autostart, basically it's telling the program, rerun yourself with the -a flag. Because remember, if I just did the -a flag, I end up in the same place, right? So kind of maybe a little messy and convoluted, but I thought it was, something neat. And again, for purposes of this video and just for educational purposes, I did a little bit of extra work, some more interesting things with this script than probably were needed, because it is a very basic script that I may have overcomplicated a little bit, but I hope you guys learned a little something from my little walkthrough through the script. Now I'm going to push this over to my GitLab. My GitLab is gitlab.com/dwt1, and then look for my new repository I just created called FZ Scripts for Fuzzy Finder Scripts. And I'm going to push this program called Auto to it. And if you guys want the script, hey, feel free to use it. Now, before I go, I need to thank a few special people. I need to thank the producers of this episode. And of course, that's Matt, Steve, Cap, K-Man, Darloff, Lee, Mythos, Urian, Paul, Peace, Arch, Fedora, Realities for Less, Rip, Profit, Roland, More Gentle, and Ubuntu, and Willie. These guys, they're my highest tier patrons over on Patreon. Without these guys, this quick video, well, not so quick video, about me scripting a little bit with Fuzzy Finder and some basic shell commands, this video wouldn't have been possible. The show is also brought to you by each and every one of these fine ladies and gentlemen. All these names you're seeing on the screen right now, these are all my supporters over on Patreon, because I don't have any corporate sponsors. I'm sponsored by you guys, the community. If you like my work, want to see more videos about Linux, free and open source software, and bash scripting, subscribe to DistroTube over on Patreon. All right, guys. Peace.